Title and thumbnail should be a bit curious, but this video is going to be talking about how I feel about this overall thing, this curse mentality. Day, if you don't know who Day is, you can find his channel in the description, but Day is doing a bunch of videos talking about curse mentalities, and I was planning to do something like that, but at the same time, I'm gonna not do that because that's one, his thing that he decided to start with, and then two, I'm going to most likely talk about why this is an issue more than like talk about these various things, because yeah, some of these are really cursed and it's like, what the fuck am I reading? But pretty much when it comes to this overall video, it's gonna be explaining just the execution of global PSO2, Japanese PSO2. I can't really vouch Southeast Asia PSO2, but that is also a thing as well. But strictly in this video, it's gonna be Japan and then global, because they executed things differently, and this does play a factor to how the overall game is for both global and Japan, because there is a different atmosphere. There's obviously a gap in between those who are true vets of Japanese PSO2 versus that of global. And yeah, there's a number of things you got to consider, and it took me a while to kind of think on this, and I kind of hate bringing up this fact because it's a bit unfair, especially if you had to put it in a way where it's like a veteran or like a 30 years old that went into a bunch of jobs and all that, have a lot of life experience, versus that of someone who just came out of college. That's the same thing with global PSO2 and Japanese PSO2. There's a number of differences in-game and out-of-game, and there's different mentalities. Even if I say one bad thing about one side of PSO2, note that it might have already been done on the other side as well. So if I bring up toxicity or toxic elites, toxic casuals, note that it's, even though I emphasize on one side, note that they're still bad on the other side. There's still said toxic casuals, toxic elitists over in the Japanese side as well. So both of them have some of these problems, but one of them is just emphasized heavily compared to the other because of how it was done. Some of these things that I don't remember seeing as a problem in Japanese PSO2 is a problem over there in global PSO2. Granted that I'm kind of skewed and it's kind of biased because I'm stuck on one ship and I only seen the development of one ship compared to all the other ships. There's 10 ships over there in Japanese PSO2. There's only 4 ships in global, and not all of the population have these certain mentalities, but it varies because of whatever people are exposed to. So this video in itself has a lot of skewness to it and a bunch of my opinions, but I just want to bring it up because this is something to note, and this is why I see a lot of things that I'm just scratching my head saying like, this is actually a problem or this is a thing. Granted that, once again, I myself am not a good source as well, but I just want to say crud about this. I want to bring it up and just talk about it. And this isn't going to be as organized, but if it is, there's certain timestamps in the description. Time skips. So let me just bring this up. The sheer fact that Japanese PSO2 is an 8-year game, and then that of global PSO2, which is only 1 year old. They haven't even reached their 2nd year yet, but NGS is around the corner because of that. Now, obviously, it's, once again, in terms of the execution, Microsoft, when they showed it on EA, said that they were going to play catch-up, and they would try to do it at the end of the year. And by the time they released said trailer, like episode 6 was released over on the Japanese side, and they said they were going to catch up, and they kind of fulfilled that by literally catching up and wrapping everything up by the end of, what, 2020? Got into episode 6 by 2020. So they were able to deliver. It's just that, once again, they kind of put a criteria and standard on that, and not only that, they had to go on at 8 times speed, because once again, the game is 8 years old. They were able to flesh out 6 episodes on the Japanese side in those 8 years. Granted that some of these months within these years had no updates whatsoever, and it was very, very slow. Global was able to cover that in a year. That is a good and a bad thing, and that established a good chunk of things as well. But yeah, it's just that, once again, execution is the thing that made some of these differences. For example, global does not have expert matchmaking. I still need to make a video talking about expert matchmaking, give my honest opinion about it. But global does not have expert matchmaking. Japan has it. Japan implemented this back in episode 4, so it was somewhere between maybe 14, 15, 16. I don't remember the exact year. But the thing is, Japanese PSO2 implemented it. Now, it was because of some other reason that they added the expert matchmaking, but strictly speaking, they added expert matchmaking in Japanese PSO2, and it wasn't that bad in the beginning. Small little things that you had to do, and they were implementing change and trying to emphasize on these changes. But like global never got expert matchmaking. Some people decided to go ahead and do or take matters in their own hand and make some other groups here and there. But the thing is, global does not have expert matchmaking. They might have their reasons, but the thing is, that's the difference. And there's a glaring difference from that of Japan with their expert matchmaking, and then global without their expert matchmaking. And then not only that, like, there's so many things that stemmed from how fast global went through most of their content, and it could be a good and a bad thing. Whereas Japan literally had to, some of us had to wait it out, and there weren't as many good things within some of these years or these transitions. So it's just a number of factors you gotta consider, and it kind of it could be compared to like a dad. Like, let's say we have two dads with like their sons. One of these dads are harsh, stern, and they're not gonna spoil their son as much, and they want them to work hard and do a lot of stuff. And when the child grows up, they will most likely enact some of those things that were taught to them. Whereas the other pair with the dad that will spoil adult and give a bunch of stuff to their child and just spoil them continuously until they grow up, they might have a bunch of bad quirks to them, bad traits to them that aren't ideal for certain situations. And that's what happened with global PSO2 and Japanese PSO2. It's like Japanese PS2 literally went through a different sort of experience compared to that of global, where it was spoiled. Is this a good and a bad thing? That depends on how you view it, because everyone has a different sort of view to it. Everyone has their own opinions. It is subjective. And the thing is, like, you can't reenact the same stuff that Japan went through over there in global, because you can't really do that. It doesn't work like that, because global didn't execute it in that certain way. They didn't really do the same thing like Japan did. Not only that, events in Japan only happen in Japan. For example, the one that I mentioned in streams is the DDoS incident. Now, DDoS is a fancy word of some hacking thing, and it did kick in over on the Japanese side, and that created a giant... It created a barrier between Japanese and Westerners, or those who weren't Japanese players. And there were a lot of things that had happened during that time, and I don't know how many people would even know about that certain event. There were several other events I remembered as well, especially with certain individuals, famous individuals over on the Japanese side. So it's like, there's so many things I can pull up and bring up and talk about, but that's the thing. It's just a different upbringing. Global had a different sort of approach compared to that Japan. And some of these mentalities that Day has pointed out, or some of these thought processes that had happened, have been addressed on both sides. For example, with the, with people leeching. There was actually a system in place over there in Japan where they will figure out if you were leeching or you were purposely leaving parties. And there's a point that you could actually get banned because of that. Global didn't really enforce that, unless, I don't know, someone reported them multiple times, but it wasn't really a thing. So, once again, it depends on how it was executed, and it's going to be hard to kind of relate to some of this stuff. It's like, yes, like, Japan has 8 years, and yes, some of their true vets are literally vets, and they've seen so much crap. But at the same time, it's like, global had their own different approach as well, and some of the stuff that Japan had to go through, like, we didn't really have such luxuries or ease into a bunch of stuff. Like, if I played over there in global, I would definitely be able to save a lot of my meseta for other things, and I would most likely be a billionaire. Granted that I would take some of the knowledge that I took from Japanese over there into global, but it's just that it's the upbringing, it's how the execution was and how it had an influence to the game. Now there's other influences as well, not saying that like certain, it wasn't just the developers that did it and how it was done. There's a number of things that could influence a good chunk of things, and how stuff that wasn't a norm became a norm. Like, once again, I feel like there's a lot more toxic casuals over there in global, but at the same time, there might be a good chunk of it on the Japanese side, especially with how I heard about, like, Ship 1, question mark. Not dissing on you guys on Ship 1 over on the Japanese side, it's just that I heard some bad things here and there. Granted that, once again, I'm not over there, so I don't have a bunch of credibility with said statement. So don't kill me. But that's the thing, you need to experience it yourself, and the reason why I went back to global and visit global is so I can get a bit of the experience. And I gotta say, there's a shit ton of crap that I did not think I would have to deal with over there in global that I'm kind of glad I didn't have to deal with over on the Japanese side. It's just so weird, and this isn't true to all ships and all MPAs, but I just saw a lot of things that I was like, wow, okay. Hopefully they get everyone on the same page with NGS, but we shall see, because it could be different again as well. Hopefully not, because I don't want to make videos where I can easily point out some stuff where it's like, oh yeah, global has this, Japan has this, there's differences. No, I don't want that. And some of these differences can be good and or bad. Like, once again, there's triggers that you guys can easily get over there in global that you can't get in Japan. Whereas in Japan, we have a bunch of goodies in the mission pass where global does not. Especially in terms of some of the technical things that would be so good to have, because it just covers some other things like the extra rare draw rate boosters, the extra try boosters, like the rare ones, then also like the capsules and all that, or the pop items or the add ability items. So there's a number of things I could go into, but I'm not gonna make this video as long. I'll most likely cut it off here. It's just that the upbringing for both global and Japan are different, and one side could easily judge the other side, but the question is, can you physically see some of these things, and can you experience it and say the same things? Like, the thing is, I went to global once again to actually experience it and actually play with you guys, the viewers, some of my members as well, and get a totally different experience than what I'm used to. But like, even though I didn't bump into a lot of the things that a lot of people complain about from the Reddits and forums and all that, it's like, you guys made the journey worth it. Like, you guys that decide to go out of your way to help me and just party up with me and just chat with me and stuff, you guys were the one that made it. So you guys were the real MVP when it comes to me having a good experience over there in global. Granted that I went into some torturous runs here and there, like, for example, Primordial runs, Primordial Darkness, fucking 40-minute run, what the fuck, that hurt me a lot. And what's worse is that I kind of got aggro here and there too in some runs, and it's like, I have shit gear, why do I have aggro? But anyways, that's a bit of my anecdotes, and I could go more into it, but that's the thing though, it's like, there's two different experiences, and yes, it's a bit unfair to do some comparisons, but some of it's fact. But at the same time, you had to give it some leniency because of the fact that, like, it's so different, and maybe it is a good and a bad thing, I don't know. It's very subjective, it's very opinionated, and obviously everyone has their own adventure and their own story to tell, and this is just one of many. This is just my output on this particular thing. Like, I can easily talk about some of the cursed mentalities people have, and some of them may not be as bad, and it's understandable because maybe I was in that same situation where some people would be farming so long for I don't know how many days, and they finally got the certain weapon that they want, but then around the corner they release an easier way to get said weapon. This was a bit of an issue that I saw some people address or mention in global, but it wasn't really that bad on JP. But it depends on when you play the game and how it was done, and this ultimately falls onto execution. So what are your thoughts about this? Once again, this is just a video that I want to bring up and just kind of go on a willy-nilly talk about. Give me your 2 cents. Maybe you have some stories you want to share, put it down below in the comments. But that's what I saw, and this is why we have certain things that are different. Some of them are present in both servers. It's just that one might be a bit more, it might stand out a bit more compared to the other side. But yep, that is it. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.